Hello, veterans out there. This is the irate veteran coming at you with another video. Any veterans out there that need any veteran to veteran advice, go to vamadness.com, fill out the contact sheet, and I'll be happy to advise. Let me thank my sponsors, Eric Gang, Sean Kindle, and Hill and Ponton. I have links to all three of their websites on my website. So if you want to learn more about them, click those links and learn everything you need to know about them. Let me read this little disclaimer. I am not recommending any specific lawyer or law firm to veterans. Veterans need to conduct their own due diligence before selecting a lawyer or law firm as their representative. VAmadness.com, I'm trying to turn into a one-stop shop, right, to help you with your claims. I have links to my videos, links to VA forms, links to the DBQs, links to the rating schedule, and example statements. So use it, enjoy it. This is my part 3 of my 3-part knee series. We're going to talk about compensation and pension exams and increases. The C&P exam. Right? We're talking probably it's going to take maybe 15, 20 minutes, a little longer, a little less. They're going to fill out a disability benefit questionnaire, a DBQ at the exam. Let me talk about contractors for a second. Most exams now are done by contractors. They are likely to send you a pre-exam information form. And for those of you who have written a good statement, just attach your statement to it and say, read my statement. For those of you who didn't do a statement, you'll want to fill out that form best you can. I would advise you to download my increased knee statement example and use that as a guide for answering those questions. So let's talk about the exam itself. The most important part about any exam is knowing what to expect. On a knee exam, it's pretty much a straight physical exam. You don't have a lot of input. You have very little input to it. So what you need to know is just be familiar with what's going to happen and the couple of questions you're going to get, how to answer those questions. So let's talk about those things. A examiner is required to use a measuring tool to measure your range of motion. They're not allowed to eyeball it. I think it's called a goniometer. I think that's how you pronounce it. But either way, they're required to use it. So if they try to eyeball it, challenge them, tell them to use the tool. They're required to. They'll measure both extension and flexion motions. They'll take both active and passive range of motion measurements. Active is simply when you move your knee. Passive is they're going to move your knee, right? Which means, yes, they're going to touch you. They're going to probably grab your knee and ankle and move your knee back and forth to do that measurement, right? So just be prepared for like the touch. Repetitive use over time range of motions. They're going to have you move your knees back and forth like 3 times, and then they're going to redo the extension and flexion measurements to see if it has changed. Now, here's 2 parts where you're going to have input. There will be 2 estimates that you're going to need to describe to the examiner. And one estimate is for range of motion for repeated use over time. Repeated use over time is simply what is your range of motion like at the end of your day, right? After you've been on your feet all day, at work or walking or mowing the lawn, whatever it is, what your normal day is like. Do you have further range of motion limitations at like the end of your day, right? And so you'll need to describe those further limitations to the examiner and put that explanation in the form of a math problem. In other words, at the end of the day, my range of motion is limited by about 1/3 of normal, right? Simply, they can easily do the math, right? The same with flare-ups. You can describe your flare-ups. You should be talking about your really bad days and how much more your range of motion is limited. Again, put it in this simple math problem form, right? My range of motion during flare-ups is limited by at least 1/2, right? Or something, again, put it in the form of a math problem. So they can do an easy estimate. What I see often on these estimates is just a couple degrees knocked off, basically because the veteran says something like, after I'm on my feet all day or during flare-ups, my range of motion is really, really bad, right? I can barely walk. Oh, well, what does that mean? How do they do an estimate for that? And that's why typically they just knock a couple of degrees off. Well, that's BS, right? I mean, I know when my knee flares up, I can barely bend it like at all, right? Certainly can't put any weight on it, and so yeah, it's definitely at least my range of motion is limited by at least half, if not more, if not completely at times, right? So again, make sure you give put it in the form of your explanation in the form of a math problem, so they can get the proper estimate. They'll also check for instability. Again, that's a check they do, nothing you can do about that. They're required to consider your statements, diagnostics, and any treatise or anything else you submitted with your claim, right? So really, that's all there is to it for a typical compensation and pension exam. Now, there's a few more things you need to know, especially for you veterans who did not write a statement. And remember, at the exam, if you didn't write a statement, the examiner could only rely on what you tell him about your symptoms and your functional limitations and if you have instability or not, right? And you may misspeak, you may forget, the examiner may mishear, he may choose not to write things down. The point is, you're really at the examiner's mercy if you haven't written a statement. So what I would advise you to do if you haven't written a statement is to make some notes before you go to the exam and write down what all your symptoms are, what your functional limitations are, and if you have instability or not, right? So that when you go to the exam, make sure you talk about everything on your notes, right? So, and hopefully the examiner will mark that down. He may not. I talk to veterans all the time that say, well, I told the examiner that, but he didn't mark it down. Well, you're kind of screwed if you didn't put that in your statement. So, for you veterans who have a statement, you'll be good to go, especially if you followed my example. So again, that example is for increases is downloadable at my website. Use it. That's what it's there for. Tailor it to your situation. So now, the examiner, for those of you who didn't write a statement, they're just going to ask you your situation for your knee. They're not going to ask you if you have locking, pain, swelling, weakness, buckling, stiffness, looseness, popping, grinding. I mean, they're not going to go through and ask you all these symptoms. That's why you really have to make notes. The same with the functional limitations. That they may not ask you. They may ask, but most of the times they're not going to ask about if there's problems with standing, walking, sitting. Do you get tired? Does your knee tire easily? Right? So, or even about instability. So it's your responsibility to get this information to the examiner. For those veterans with statements, read your statement to the examiner. Bring a copy of it, hand it to the examiner. Say, listen, this is in my claims file. I just brought a copy for your use, right? And if he says, well, I don't want to look at it. Well, fine. Whenever they ask you a question about, tell me about your history, read your statement, right? That's what you do. You don't want to misspeak, so read your statement, right? So that's it for the comp and pen. That's everything you really need to know, good luck. Increases. Of course, if you get a knee replacement, you're going to file for an increase, especially you get the Temp 100 for 4 months, right? But for those of you who have only a partial knee replacement or for some other type of operation where you believe has caused some range of motion limitations, you'll of course want to file an increase. Or if your range of motion has gotten worse. Veterans with instability who start to have instability, of course, file an increase. But again, if you only have a 10% rating for instability, and you get an assistive device prescribed, well, then you should have a 20% rating. So file for the increase. I see a lot of veterans who have old increase or old instability ratings of 10%, and years later they have gotten canes or braces. Again, file for that increase to get updated to the 20%. For those of you who've had some kind of diagnostics that shows meniscus issues, and you have locking pain and swelling, you definitely want to file for an increase for the meniscus issue, or if you've had the meniscus removed and you have significant symptoms. That's basically all there is to when you would file. How to file is, of course, a normal application for benefits. In my case, I prefer to do it on paper. You can do it through electronically through va.gov. I don't trust their program. I don't like their program. So I put mine on paper. And all you have to do, again, bilateral knee condition worsened, right? Or you could put, 2 lines, left knee worsened, right knee worsened, however you prefer to do it. And seeking an increased evaluation, and then when you believed your condition worsened. And that's important because you can get back pay to up to 1 year before you actually file the increase if you can show that the increase actually happened during that past year, right? So many veterans will go and they'll have like a brace or a cane prescribed for instability, and they don't file for the increase right away. Well, that's okay. As long as you do it within a year, you'll get paid back to that time frame, right? So if you have documentation to where you've been going to treatment and these issues are, further, an increase is justified through these treatment visits, then of course, that is justification also, as long as it meets the requirement for the rating. So the point here is the first paragraph is to mark, when did that increase start? So for those of you who have a friend or relative who can write a witness statement, that's always a good idea to have that done, because your subjective reports of these symptoms are, may, not be significant enough to award like any back pay. But if you have some witness statements, right, for example, that helps you document when your instability started, or when you started having, more pain or swelling or stiffness or whatever it might be, that might be good enough to get, up to, some months back pay before you file the increase. Again, get a witness statement if you can. By the way, a statement is really the heart of your increase, right? Because you need to cover all the things that might lead you to get a rating for your knee in your statement. Again, the statement that you can download at my website, covers all these things. So paragraph 2 here is about your symptoms and functional limitations. And in the very first sentence, you're talking about what all your symptoms are. So there's no question what your symptoms are. You have it documented. And then go on to give some examples of, functional limitations caused by those symptoms. Paragraph 3 and 4. 3 is important because functional limitations. Give some examples, and I think it's always a good thing to let the adjudicator know what you're going through on a daily basis. The paragraph 4, again, we're still talking about some functional limitations, but then I end it with, typically my knees are under stress, from walking, standing, kneeling, for however many hours a day. But then I end it with, at the end of each day, my range of motion for both extension and flexion are reduced by approximately 1/3. There is your estimate math little problem there for repeated use over time, right? So so now you have that documented. Flare-ups, again, you want to talk about how often they happen, how severe they are, and give some examples of what happens during those flare-ups. But notice at the end of paragraph 5 here, typically my range of motion for flexion and extension is reduced by 1/2 or more. Right? So again, tailor these things to fit your situation. And again, there's your little math problem for flare-ups, right? So again, it's covered. So I end it by letting them know about any diagnostics that I have, as well as any prescribed assistive devices. Of course, they're supposed to check your medical records for this information. Remember, they're really bad at reviewing the information you send them, so it helps if you call those issues out on your statement, right? So then I end it. I have there's a little certifying statement here. The downloadable statement is in the form of a statement, right? So as long as you fill it out like that and sign it and date it, and you'll be, you can submit it like that. Or again, you could just copy and paste it to the statement and support a claim form, the 4138, and you'll be good to go. So that's all there is to it. Right? I'm not going to spend a lot more time here. I'm not going to spend any more time here. So, irate veteran, out.